Secretary Kerry will travel to Kiev, Ukraine on February 5th to meet with Ukrainian President Poroshenko, Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, and Foreign Minister Klimkin, and members of Ukraine's parliament. The Secretary's visit will highlight the United States' steadfast support for Ukraine and its people.
Peace talks have collapsed in the Ukraine, as if anyone who understands the conflict thought they had a shred of succeeding. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin continues his unchecked war, and more people are dying. America is thinking weapons. Ukraine is thinking more peacekeepers as the body count rises. Let's welcome to MidPoint national security analyst for the Clarion Project and adjunct professor of Homeland Security, Ryan Mauro joins us. Professor Mauro, thanks so much for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get into this whole thing about the American government perhaps thinking about sending weapons to the Ukraine, and the Ukrainian government coming back and saying, we don't need weapons, we need peacekeepers. Is this once again the American government overestimating or perhaps wrongly guesstimating what they need to do and getting away from the real heart of the matter?
I don't know if we're trying to escape it. I mean, to the Obama administration's credit, they have put some tough sanctions on Russia that are hurting them. And then in addition, with the low price of oil, that's causing the Russians a lot of pain. Now, here's the dynamic at play. Putin, in order to counter the declining approval rating he's going to have because of his economic troubles, he has to find something to boost his ratings back up. And the thing that seems to always work for him is conflict, especially picking on his smaller neighbors around him. So we have to change that. We have to change how he thinks. And the only way you're going to do that is that you arm those countries that he picks on so that the next time he picks a fight, it becomes bloody and it doesn't benefit him, and so that he no longer views these wars and these conflicts as something that helps him.
But what about those who would say that if you arm the nation, then all you're doing is America is pulling themselves into the conflict, getting even closer to it, and that means eventually, one way or another, and this is what some of the critics will say, a nose-to-nose with Vladimir Putin?
You've already got that. Look at the comments that Vladimir Putin is saying, where he's talking about Russia being the bear again, and they're going to reshape the international order in order to make American power decline and Russian power ascend. So we're already at that stage. We have to recognize them as a geopolitical threat and think of some ways to counter how they make their calculations, obviously without escalating this into something it doesn't need to be, but we do need to stick by our allies and try to shift how they make these calculations.
But are we not talking about years here? Because it would seem as if Putin has dug in, the people have dug in behind him, of course, and every single day that you don't do something, or the world community doesn't do something about the Ukraine, more people are dying from tank shells.
I don't know if it has to be that long of a thing, because the Russian economy is so weak right now that you have Russian officials that are known for their bluster and saying everything's going to be right, everything's great, are actually admitting that they have a bit of a crisis on their hands. So they're in a bad position right now. And if they do pick a fight with the Ukraine and we assist the Ukrainians in giving them a bloody nose, I think that the Russian people who are attracted to the strength of Putin will start turning on him, because then they'll say, you got us into something that we didn't realize the cost was going to be this high. We should also be speaking out on human rights and how Putin is trying to win over the Christian world, especially evangelicals, to his side. There's an ideological element here that I'm not seeing too many people discuss.
All right, I got about 90 seconds here. Let me spin to Iran, if you will, because here's a comment from David Cohen, who is the Treasury Department's outgoing sanctions czar. He says that Iran's economy is now fundamentally incapable of recovery without a nuclear accommodation from the West. Wait a minute now. You've got people in Congress saying we're not going to give them any nuclear accommodation. He's saying if you don't, then they'll never get out of the dark ages. What's the answer?
Well, the answer is that you want to maximize the pressure on the Iranian regime so that we can say to the world, if there is ever a moment that they're going to come to a meaningful compromise, it was now. And if they don't take it, then we'll know that they're never going to be willing to give up their nuclear weapons program. It's a very important point to realize how economically in trouble the Iranian regime is and how much they need Western aid. The objective here is to get sanctions lifted, get Western businesses involved in Iran so that they can pressure their host governments, and then sanctions become very difficult, if not impossible, for the U.S. to implement in the future. They want to shield themselves from Western economic pressure so that they can do whatever they want.
About 20 seconds. What should we take then from Iran launching a domestically made satellite into orbit? They claim it will transmit images of the Earth's surface to ground stations. I don't know if everybody's buying that.
Well, this is why the deal is so flawed. It doesn't cover all elements of the Iranian nuclear program. ballistic missile development, especially which they do with the North Koreans, is part of that, and it is not covered by this agreement. They froze some parts of the program while expanding others. They just shifted their resources.
And the shifting of resources, one way or another, will put the world on the brink once again, thanks to the people in Iran, Russia, and so many other places. Ryan Mauro, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
All right. There is not one single doubt every presidential administration uses dirty tricks to go after those it disagrees with. Cheryl Atkinson has stated her proof of being a target. We'll talk to her next here on MidPoint.